Lately, Genshin Impact has been giving us most answers directly without beating around the bush, but we still have some massive questions that still need to be answered, and the biggest one is probably the first Descender's true identity. Today we will try to figure out who the first Descender is, but also what a Descender is in the first place. But first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update to the game itself. Well then, grab your Genesis Pearl and let's get this video started. First of all, let's quickly review what we know about the second, third and fourth Descenders first. Going backwards, the fourth Descender is the Traveler, that in my case is Either. He isn't trying to change the world, he's only helping out those in need, but he is still defined as the fourth Descender without him even knowing that he was, since he found out about the Descenders in Sumeru. Before the Traveler actually arrived on Teyvat though, the Abyss sibling, Lumine in my case, actually tried and is still trying to change the world entirely. Her goal is to face the Heavenly Principles directly, but she is not defined as a Descender, but she's also weirdly considered to be from Teyvat, so that might be the reason why she can't be counted as a Descender. The third Descender instead arrived before the Archon War. He apparently entered some forbidden place and his remains were turned into the Seven Noses by the Heavenly Principles. This Descender also seems to share with the Traveler the ability to use elemental powers without a vision, which might be a relevant ability all Descenders share. Anyway, we don't know who the third Descender actually was for now, we only know him as Sarelainen or Ajax from Myths, but he's soon to become the main focus in the Snezhnayan Archon quest, so we'll find out soon enough. Slight digression, I still think Xbalanque is somehow connected to the third Descender because he appeared in the same era, he was an outlander in Atlan, and neither the Angels nor Fate could foresee his arrival and future deeds. And technically Mawika still hasn't shared a secret only she knows. When it comes to the second Descender, things are more complicated. We literally have no info about who it was, nor has the second Descender even actually been mentioned in the game. Some believe it's Nibelung, but considering he was born alongside the planet itself, he is the most native being of Teyvat, while the Descenders seem to be aliens, so I highly doubt it's him. The best bet is on the Voyager, the intergalactic immortal being that sent her sentient will into Teyvat and possessed a young boy from Hyperborea. She technically never physically went to Teyvat, but since the concept of Descender revolves around the will to change the world or its fate, and the Voyager sent her will inside Teyvat, it might actually be her. Now, we don't really know what exactly makes a person a Descender, we only have crumbs to work with that give us an incomplete definition of this concept. Both Renee and Surtalogy talked about a will that can change the world, so a Descender probably doesn't need to be actively trying to change the world, they only need to be able to do so to earn that title. It's also clear that a Descender has to be an alien on Teyvat, since Renee tried to become a Descender but he realized this string was impossible to achieve, while Surtalogy defied fate, the rules of Teyvat, and even left the planet and is still not a Descender. Plus the Lumine situation makes it even clearer since she's not a Descender because she is now from Teyvat. As a consequence, an alien can be a Descender because and only if the fate of the world doesn't affect them. Obviously this is not the whole story, there's still an unknown factor that we haven't been told, something we will probably understand in Snezhnaya, but we do know two more valuable pieces of info about the Descenders. First of all, an alien can become a Descender later. Introducing Skirk, probably the future 5th Descender. In her teaser, Surtalogy, whose words are way more reliable than whatever Renee ever said since his theories turned out to be completely wrong, explained what a Descender is on Teyvat, but he also said something really interesting. Skirk isn't a Descender yet. This has always made me think that Surtalogy sent her to Tevat so that she could become a Descender, because only a Descender would be able to finally give him the fight and the ending he's so desperately looking for all over the universe. But Skirk has done the exact opposite. She's never meddled with the world, she's never forged any bond, she even erases the memories of herself from the people, so she's never done anything that would have turned her into a Descender. Maybe a Descender simply needs to want to be part of the world. The second piece of info we have is that whenever a Descender arrives on Tevat, a catastrophe happens, the world changes and the overseers of the world are replaced by someone else. In short, the arrival of a Descender causes a new samsara or a new era to begin. Tevat was originally overseen by the Dragon Sovereigns, but when the first Descender arrived, the angels took their place, they became the guides of humanity and even helped the Moon Goddesses in their work, and then the first war against the Dragon Sovereigns happened, which definitely changed the world. Millennia later, when the second Descender arrived, the angels rebelled against the Heavenly Principles, but they lost, they were cursed, the Celestial Nails were sent down and most civilizations were wiped out, and in the end the gods replaced the angels, the people followed them, worshipped them, and countless little territories were created. Then, millennia later, the third Descender arrived, he was turned into the Seven Noses and the Archon War began. The gods fought each other and the 5 winners, plus Igeria by default, and Xbalanque who later stole Xucalto's authority, became the Archons, received the Noses as a reward, and the 7 nations of Tevat were created. Then, millennia later again, Lumine helped Karya acquire the Abyss. In the meantime, Either also crash-landed on Tevat, and a new catastrophe, the Cataclysm, happened. The world was almost destroyed once again, 5 Archons died and were replaced, Venti went into a long sleep, and John Lee prepared himself to fake his death. As you can see, history repeats itself. There's always a Descender that arrives, there's always a catastrophe, and the world always changes. What will happen if Skirk becomes a Descender though? Well, the world seems to be steering toward a new era, one in which the Gnosis have lost their value, since the Archons don't really care about them, an era in which the Archons are becoming more human, an era in which the people are overseeing the world themselves. Might this be the reason why some of these humans received a vision and have become Allogenes, so candidates for godhood? When it comes to the first Descender, here is where things get complicated. Let's start from the good old Before Sun and Moon, in which the Eternal Throne of the Heavens arrives on Tevat, sends out the Primordial One, who then creates the Shades, fights with the Dragon Sovereigns, terraforms Tevat, and creates humanity, until a second throne, which we now know is Nibelung, arrives and a new war begins, ending the story because Delphi Pytho fell underground and was cut off from the rest of the world. First of all, this story was written by the scribe of Tokoyo Okami, and it sounds like he didn't actually witness these events, also because he would have been a few millennia old when he wrote the book. Despite that, I don't think he lied, he simply wrote what he knew to be the truth, and considering his title, he most likely penned down what Tokoyo Okami, that is Esteroth, told him to write, and who was he to question the words of one of the Shades? So this story is a half-truth, or a truth concealed to sound like a different story. For example, the Primordial One didn't actually fight the Dragon Sovereigns as soon as the Eternal Throne arrived, they initially coexisted just fine. The first war, the one in which Xuquatl was frozen inside the volcano of Tolan, happened way later. The story was tweaked a little, probably because it's about a section of history that the Heavenly Principles are trying to conceal from the world, reason why the people of Enkanomiya were only allowed back on the surface if they agreed to forget their knowledge of the past, which was then turned into the Sin Shades by, yet again, Esteroth, and something tells me she did it without the Heavenly Principles' consent. Now, we need to figure out who the main actors of the story are, the Eternal Throne of the Heavens and the Primordial One. The latter should be easy to figure out since in the book it created humanity, which is exactly what the Primordial Human we recently learned about also did. The Primordial One is the Primordial Human. The Eternal Throne instead might be a little trickier, but our beloved Raiden Shogun might help us since she said that only through eternity are you closest to the heavenly principles, and it's probably no coincidence that it's called the Eternal Throne. We also just learned that something crashed into Lusalim's lunar veil, and this something then acquired Lusalim's project to create the fake sky. So if we also add the fact that Before Sun and Moon talks about an arc being opened when humanity was created, and that Neuvillette said that Nibelung ruined the Heavenly Principles' functions, I think it's safe to say that the Heavenly Principles are either a spaceship, the Eternal Throne, or whatever operates it. Call it what you want. I personally hope they'll keep the AI talk to the minimum, so maybe they're a database lifeform like the Stellar Blackbody, an Intelletron like in Star Rail, or an intelligent construct like in ZZZ. What's important right now is that the Heavenly Principles change things in the heavens, so they're the Lord of the Firmament, while the Primordial One changed things on Teyvat, creating the human realm. We still haven't figured out who the first Descender is, but why are they called Descenders in the first place? Well, since the Moon Goddesses mentioned the Descender while they were still coexisting with these guests from the Sea of Stars, the term most likely didn't originally refer to one's ability to challenge the world or its fate. It probably simply meant what it sounds, someone who descended onto Teyvat. Considering that Nibelung modified the moons to fire them at something in the sky, as shown in this mural, and that the Heavenly Principles have been defined as the Morning Star multiple times, then maybe they weren't the ones who descended onto the planet. It was someone else, someone who terraformed the planet for the humans it then created. The Primordial One/Human is the first Descender. Those of you who thought, but Nahida said that the Heavenly Principles are the first Descender, raise your hand. Now, Nahida does rule over wisdom, but how absurd would it be for her not to know the whole truth behind Teyvat's genesis when she didn't even know that the fake sky was even a thing? Going back to the Primordial One, we still need to address the name Phanes, and to do so we need the Gnostic Chorus. The story is simple. From a kingdom established among the heavens, which could be the Eternal Throne, a crowned heir was sent to Teyvat to look for the Genesis Pearl, which we still know nothing about, in the Kingdom of Darkness, which may or may not be the Void Realm. But she was corrupted, forgot her noble origins, a known effect of abyssal corruption, and suddenly believed to be the Queen of the Kingdom of Darkness. And lastly, the second crowned heir was sent down to complete her work. Doesn't the story of the first heir sound familiar? A being of light that was stolen by the King of Darkness, as in the heretical story of the birth of the Primordial Human? What if this fairy tale was a way to preserve some knowledge of a section of history that has been removed from Irminsul, something like what Nahida did with Scaramouche's memories, and it actually talks about the true Primordial Humans? This not only would explain why Nicole said that the angels were created by the Primordial Humans, plural, but also the Primordial One may have been Phanes. The scribe probably had some doubts about the Primordial One since it was a woman first, reason why the Shades are also women, and then suddenly turned into a man, but he would have never questioned Istaroth, so his solution was that Phanes was androgynous and moved on. This might also explain Arya's suspicion about how Istaroth viewed the Descender. We can interpret this in two ways. Either the Shades weren't happy because they were created by the first heir, but after she got corrupted, they ended up under the second heir, so Istaroth was against him, or Istaroth was in love with the second heir, the Descender, and she might have done whatever the Descender asked her to do, so she could have suddenly become a potential threat to the world, especially because she was learning about the gravitational potential and the metric tensor, which in Teyvat are the law of time, while in reality these terms come from the general relativity and they're used to measure many things, among which both space and time. To conclude, we still have one last issue with Phanes, and that is Nicole's teaser. When the angels rebelled, they lost their shape, power, and knowledge, but Nicole wanted to keep some, so she needed to find a way to trick the Heavenly Principles. In the teaser, she says,
"As long as I pay the right price, Creating that loophole shouldn't be too hard, right? Phanes.
And of course, everybody believed that she was addressing the Heavenly Principles directly, but to me that makes absolutely no sense. First of all, would an angel use the Heavenly Principles name that easily when even Yoholtekutin stopped herself from doing it?
I think not.
So I'll use an example to explain my interpretation. Imagine Ningguang decided that everyone needs to work overtime but Keqing didn't want to, so she thought, as long as I pay the right price, creating a loophole shouldn't be too hard, right? And here she says a name. Would she, even rhetorically, say Ningguang's name, the one person she's trying to trick? It's like announcing your strategy to your enemy, it would be stupid. Instead, what if she said, right, Yanfei? Yanfei always finds a loophole to achieve what she wants, and she managed to do it in the past, so wouldn't it make more sense to use her name, since she would be a valid example to follow? So what I think Nicole meant was that Phanes, the first Descender, the second heir, also rebelled against the Heavenly Principles but retained his power and wisdom through a loophole. So what Nicole said was something like, if you did it in the past, it shouldn't be too hard for me to do the same, right, Phanes? Remember that the shades were cast, meaning thrown down in this case, since it's what Renova says in Chinese, which means that they too were demoted for some reason, and if that reason was the first Descender's rebellion against the Heavenly Principles' ways, it would mean that there's a lot about the true history of the VAT that we still don't know, which makes sense considering the story will go on for at least 2 more years. We're now weeks away from Snezhnaya, which is crazy to even think about. The Archon quest seems to be focused on the third Descender, the Shades will probably bring some info about the first Descender, and I think we'll get something like a long world quest in the ruins of Hyperborea that will give us info about the second Descender as well. So, as always, what we can do for now is to wait for Snezhnaya to be released to finally receive the answers we've been looking for. Hopefully. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact theory videos, consider subscribing. I suspect my next video will be my analysis of the 7.0 livestream, so I'll see you very soon. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.